Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's tour. Thank you for joining us. We will get started in just a couple of minutes. We'll wait for everyone to trickle in. And again, thank you for coming. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. We'll get started in about 1 minute. We have something in the chat. Good morning. Good morning to everyone. We hope you'll enjoy this tour. We've got a very special tour set up for everyone today. And all right, we'll start with introductions. We have Basil Hewitt, our supervising engineer, and we also have Alfonso Vasquez, who's also on the line. He's our head treatment plant operator over at the Lancaster water reclamation plant. So I put it in gallery mode, so hopefully you guys can all see and wave. They'll be taking you on this tour today. Mainly your main tour guide will be Basil Hewitt, our supervising engineer, who will be taking you on the magical mystery tour, what I like to call it. So before we get started, before I hand it off to him, I just wanted to point out, if you guys have any questions, please use the Q&A feature that's located at the bottom of your screen. That'll help us sort through the questions. And or you can also ask your question in person. So you can just use the raise hand feature, which is also should be located at the bottom of your screen or top right if you're using an iPad or phone. So use the raise hand feature, and then we'll call on you and you can ask your question in person. So with that, I will kick it off to Basil to get us started.
All right, thank you, Genesis. And I'm going to try to make sure, and let me know, I'm going to try to hide the feature so it's better. All right, very good. Just want to make sure everyone gets a good view. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We usually Genesis, Alfonso, and we pile into a bus and we'll drive you through the treatment plant, but we're still in unusual times. So since COVID pandemic, we've been doing these tours virtually, and there have been some pleasant surprises. We're able to see things we typically couldn't see in the bus tour for safety reasons that we can now bring to you via videotape. And as Genesis said, just jump in with a question. Either I can answer it, and if it's really tough, Alfonso will answer that. Let's move forward. So that's a little bit about the sanitation districts. We were formed in 1923. This is an actual photo from from 1920, 1921 of raw sewage going into Santa Monica Bay. This was pretty much the norm back then. Raw sewage went into our rivers and our ocean, and this resulted in life expectancy for the average person in LA County of about 50 or 55 years of age. And people realized that proper sanitation would increase our life expectancy. So we were formed in 1923 to make sure this raw sewage doesn't go into our waterways, our rivers, or our ocean. We've now grown. You know, the initial shot was down in the South Bay, but now we've grown to now 24 separate sanitation districts, or there are 24 sanitation districts that partner together. They each have their own board of directors, and each sanitation district is based on drainage area. Today's tour is going to focus on sanitation district number 14 that you see where my cursor is at. That serves the city of Lancaster, small portion of Palmdale, and unincorporated LA County. So the board of directors for sanitation district number 14 are the mayor of Lancaster, mayor of Palmdale, and the chairperson of LA County Board of Supervisors. So what's neat about our setup is that each of these sanitation districts has local control, but yet we have the buying power of a larger agency. So we get great prices on chemicals and other commodities or other things we need to run our facility, and we get economy of scale in terms of staff and so on. Of the 24 sanitation district, we serve 5.6 million people overall in LA County. We go as far south as Long Beach and as far north there as Lancaster, Palmdale. From our humble beginnings, we now have 11 wastewater treatment plants. These pins on the map represent our 11 wastewater treatment plant. With our 11 wastewater treatment plant, we treat about a little bit less than 400 million gallons of raw sewage a day. That's enough sewage to fill the Rose Bowl 4 or 5 times a day. And today we're going to focus on the Lancaster water reclamation plant. That's what you see with the pin, the black pin. And it's one of our 2 treatment plants in the Antelope Valley. And here's a great shot of the Antelope Valley from high up in the atmosphere. And so here's the Palmdale plant, which we toured last week, and here's the Lancaster plant. These 2 treatment plants, we have 11 wastewater treatment plant, and these 2 are probably the trickiest to operate and manage, because our 9 other treatment plants in the southern portion of the county, when they produce recycled water, if they have excess recycled water, they have a water body they can discharge it to. They have a river or an ocean. These 2 don't, and that makes it really kind of tricky. If they have excess recycled water, especially in the wintertime, it's all discharged on land. And if you know, and it all flows to the northeast, and it winds up on Edwards Air Force Base from the Lancaster plant. And so we have to make sure every drop is accounted for. Every drop that comes in, we either recycle it, and if we can't recycle it or reuse it, we store it in a reservoir so it doesn't flow onto Edwards Air Force Base. So let's back up. What are we talking about? What are we cleaning? Wastewater or sewage? Most people think of it as the stuff that comes from your bathroom, your toilet, your sink, your shower. It's also what comes out of your kitchen. Whatever goes down your drain winds up at our treatment plant, and that's wastewater. And how does it get to our treatment plant? Throughout the county, we have a network of trunk sewers, about 1,400 miles of trunk sewer. And that's how they get to our treatment plant. But specifically, when sewage leaves your home or business, it leaves a lateral in your home, then it goes into a local sewer line that's owned by your city or the county. And then that local line feeds into a trunk sewer that's owned and maintained and operated by the sanitation district. And I want to clarify one thing. We're not the county. We're a special district, like a school district, and we're tasked to handle wastewater. We call ourselves Los Angeles County Sanitation District because we serve Los Angeles County. We serve 78 of the 88 cities in Los Angeles County, as well as adjacent unincorporated areas, but we're not LA County. Our board, our bosses are the mayors and the city council people that sit on the respective sanitation districts, one of our 24 sanitation districts. So the sewage leaves your lateral, goes into a local line, then a trunk sewer, and then it winds up at one of our treatment plants. And let's look at the Lancaster plant. This is our largest plant in Antelope Valley. In this video, drone footage, you see the 14 freeway, with the cars going by on the 14 freeway. And then we're near 14 freeway and Avenue D. And here's a drone shot of the Lancaster water reclamation plant. So it all starts in the control room. Here's one of our operators here, Teresa May. And so this is the cockpit of the treatment plant. This is how if you notice the monitor on her desk, She can monitor every pump, every valve in the treatment plant, every operation, so they can monitor it and regulate it. And if there's a problem, then one of the operators will go out to the situation and try to resolve it and see what's going on. And we have a crew, we have a shift that's usually here 8 hours a day. And in off hours, we remotely monitor this site. And if one of the valves or one of the displays go awry, we'll send out an alarm, and we'll have someone come out, no matter what time of the day, to look into the situation and resolve it. Alfonso, do you want to add anything about the control room?
No, you hit it on point. It's pretty much the brains of the plant. So it just this is where, like you said, where we control flows, divert flows, start stop pumps. But yeah.
And if stuff shows up, then you guys have to just hustle out to the location, figure out why you're seeing what you're seeing on the monitor.
Correct. And then you have trends. So you can see the trends in the background. So it just tells us the process and how the process is, how the flows are handling, and if flows are dropping out, and we use it for a troubleshooting guide.
Oh, so when you see the second monitor to Teresa's left, if you see something going up or down, you know something different's happening.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Alfonso. He knows everything you'd ever want to know about a treatment plant. All right, so the Lancaster plant is a tertiary treatment plant. When you hear a tertiary treatment plant, there's really 3 major steps. The first step, primary, is basically a physical process. We're letting gravity do its thing. Wastewater comes in, we let gravity settle out the solids, the stuff that's floating on top, we skim off. The secondary process is biological process. It's driven by microorganisms that remove or eat the dissolved organic material in that wastewater. And then the last step, tertiary, is basically filtration and disinfection. We do what nature would do, but we do it in about 12 hours. So let's start with the primary step. There are a number of, the Antelope Valley is pretty flat. And what we're trying to do is gravity flow to our wastewater treatment plant. So you can imagine, if the valley is pretty flat, the gravity flow the sewer lines to our treatment plant means that by the time we get to our treatment plant with the sewage that's by gravity flow to treatment plant, the sewage is about 40 feet below the ground. And from there, we pump it up to the ground level, and then it goes through primary treatment, which is, we have bar screens that remove big objects that will gum up, clog up our pumps. And then we also remove grit, and then we go into the primary tank. So let's take a closer look at primary treatment. So here's an influent pump building. What this building has 5 pumps in there. They're each about pump about 10 million gallon pump, and they pump the water up to the ground level, and from there it starts the treatment process. So it lifts the water about 40 feet.
I just like to add, our highest flow days is actually Thanksgiving, so we'll see about from 24 to about 30 MGD. So,
okay, so
yeah.
we have 5 pumps. So the plant on average treats what, like 14 million gallons a day?
Yeah, 15 MGD.
Okay, but during some of the high flow days, you could see 20, 50, what do you?
Yes, usually on the weekends, we'll see 21 to 24 MGD peak. And then, like I said, Thanksgiving will be from 24 to 30. And then the highest wet weather flow, since I've been here, we probably peaked around 32, 33 MGD.
So we need all those pumps. They provide redundancy, and when the flows kind of peak up.
Correct.
Hey, I this may be a side, and I hope this is not a curveball, no pun intended. So do the flows go up when the Dodgers are playing?
We actually do see, yes, higher flows
During the
Super Bowl
playoffs.
too. So
Okay, so tonight you're gonna expect some higher flows at 5 o'clock.
yeah, probably higher ammonia load.
No comment. All right. Thank you, Alfonso. Anything else you want to add? All right, no, he's good. All right, so influent pump building. And then we go to this building that removes large objects. You're looking at a drone shot. You have bar screens that remove large objects, rags, stuff that would clog up our pump, that would require us to pull our pumps offline and declog them and assemble them. And Genesis, if there's any questions in the chat that you want to shoot at us, just let us know.
Can you
So
just
here's
quickly
what's
tell
up.
us,
Pardon?
sorry, can you just quickly tell us what MGD is?
Oh, my bad. MGD is million gallons per day. MGD, not a beer. Million gallons per day.
So in terms of Rolls Bowls, you'll tell.
Oh,
I'm kidding. No, later. You'll tell us in
okay.
terms of Rolls
Yeah.
Bowls.
Yeah. All right. So here's what's going on in that building. We have these flex rake that remove the debris. So basically they go dip down into the water and they remove the debris because we don't want it going through the plants. It'll clog up the pump. It creates a headache for Alfonso and the crew. And we have some actual footage. Usually on tours you don't get. So here's a flex rate, real live flex rate at the Lancaster water reclamation plant. And you notice the stuff that's on there. A lot of it is rags, you know, and rags, these disposable wipes are not disposable in terms of flushing down the sewer. We get a lot of that stuff. It goes into a compactor where it's ground up. And that's what it looks like. These are flushable wipes. Just imagine this clogs up your sewer lateral, and that costs a ton of money to get someone come out there and clog that. It also creates a headache at the treatment plant. And I think Alfonso wants to say a bit about that.
Yeah, that includes fog. We call it fog, fats, oils, and grease. You don't want to put that down the drain as well, because as it goes down the drain, it's hot from after cooking, and then it hardens up or coagulates in the pipe as it gets cold. And so what will happen is they'll start wrapping around those flushable wipes, and it ends up being big grease balls. And so we get big grease mats, and it's just difficult on the equipment and trying to remove it from our pumps and stuff.
So that's two methods. So only 3 P's should go down. The 3 P's should go down the sewer: pee, poo, and paper, toilet paper. And you can see here, this is an actual experiment. These jars are still in existence. They were filled in 2018. On the left, you see toilet paper and how it dissolves. And these flushable wipes, you can see they're still intact. And just recently, within the last couple of weeks, the state signed a law that requires by middle of next year that these flushable wipes will have a decal that warns consumers that they shouldn't be flushed. Put them in the trash, because it's going to be a headache for you. It's going to cost you money. It's going to be a headache for all these treatment plants. All right, so from there, after remove the big objects, we go to grit removal. Here's a grit chamber. Here's the water going through. What we do, the water goes through pretty quickly. I don't know, Fonz, how fast does the water go through this grit chamber?
It's about, the detention time in there is about 2.5 minutes. So it's relatively, the velocity is real quick. So we'll add air through diffusers on the bottom, and that helps settle out the grit. And you want to, the purpose of removing the grit is so this way it doesn't cause premature wear on pumps, because it's very abrasive.
Yeah, it's mainly like sand and eggshells. So it's almost like sandpaper just wearing down your equipment. So it's a huge cost saving to remove this grit. And so that's stuff that gets removed. And now once you remove the large oxys and the grit, then the water that comes in goes into these primary tanks. You see 6 channel here. And the water sits in these tanks for about 1.5 to 3 hours. We just slow it down. The heavy stuff sinks to the bottom. The stuff that's on top, we skim off. So a pretty good drone shot of the primary treatment. And when you hear primary treatment, it's just gravity or a physical process, gravity doing its thing. Here's a closer look of the primary tank. Even though we're not on the bus walking through the treatment plant, I had to give you that visceral feel. Here's what the tank looks like drained. You can see the boards in here, the chains, and these chains go round and round. Fonz, do you remember how deep are the primary tanks in general? What, 7.5 to 10 feet deep?
Yeah, about 10 feet.
Yeah. The newer ones are 10 feet. I think the old, yeah. So these are the primary tanks, and it show you how they work. We have a schematic that shows how it works. See, the boards are on the chain. The stuff that's settled at the bottom gets pushed into openings at the bottom. The stuff that's sitting on top gets skimmed off. Just by doing primary treatment, you remove about 60% of the impurities or the pollution in wastewater. Just that simple process, in about 2 to 3 hours, you remove 60% of the impurities in that wastewater. And this stuff gets put in what we call digester, anaerobic digester, and we'll show you that later in the tour. So the sludge, the stuff that's been settled out, gets pumped to the digester. Fonz, you want to add anything?
Yeah, part of the operator's job in the morning when they're doing their rounds is, we call it a sludge judge. So they'll actually stick a pipe that has a check valve on the bottom. It'll tell us how deep that blanket is. And so we try to keep a 3-foot blanket in those primary clarifiers. And this helps us optimize the sludge thickness of it. So this way, when we pump it to the digesters, we pump it with a consistency of kind of like oatmeal. So you don't have that much bound water to the sludge. So you want to minimize the water that you pump to the sludge, to the digester. So this way we use boilers to produce steam to keep the digesters about 98 degrees. So less water, the better.
So you pump when you get about 3 feet blanket built up at the bottom of the primary tank is what.
Correct, and it's all on timers. So we adjust timers, and it'll pump we call it a pumping cycle. So I'll go through every 72 minutes. I'll go through a pumping cycle. Each primary tank will have its own depth. So we try to adjust it to the timers on the draw off timers to maintain that 3-foot blanket.
And this is rare. In a physical bus tour, you wouldn't get to go here. It's in these galleries are underground. Yeah, you wouldn't get to. So this is the water leaving the primary tank, and we wanted to give you, again, what it's like to be there. Just hearing the water kind of cascading over these things called weirs. And what we're doing is we're skimming that water off the top. We want to just subtly skim that water off the top. We don't want to create any eddy or turbulence. We want to skim that water off the top, and that's going to go to the secondary treatment process, which is basically a biological process. So here we talk about secondary treatment. The water then goes into these tanks. Some are anoxic. That means that we don't have a lot of oxygen bubbling through them. So microorganisms that live in a oxygen depleted environment, they take hold and they remove nitrogen or ammonia compounds. And then we go into an aerobic or oxic zone where we bubble a ton of oxygen in, and those microorganisms then take over and they remove other impurities or materials, constituents in the water. And this whole process takes about 4 to 6 hours. And then what we do, and one of the things I want to point out in the schematic, is that we feed the microorganisms the wastewater from primary right here. They multiply, and then we settle them out here. We settle them out, we recycle most of it, but when we start growing more microorganisms than we need, we waste the rest, and it goes to the anaerobic digesters. And it's the same place where the stuff that was settled out of the primary tank go, and we do more treatment there. Here's a shot of the secondary treatment. And here's drone shot of, notice the bubbles in the tank. That's an aerobic zone. We're bubbling oxygen through the bottom, and it's allowing us to grow trillions and trillions of microorganisms. They eat that material. And then we go to the area that's not bubbling, where we grow microorganisms that what we call an NDN process, a nitrification denitrification process, where we're going to help these microorganisms are going to convert ammonia into different nitrate, nitrite, and then nitrogen gas, so we don't have that in the water, that the clean water we produce. Here's a ground level shot. And you can see the bubbling. We have disc at the bottom of these tanks and bubbling oxygen through, so we can support trillions and trillions of microorganisms. And on an actual tour, we would walk along the railings and get a good feel. And it's pretty interesting, it's pretty impressive. And here's a schematic that shows you how it works. So those activated sludge are basically microorganisms that we've settled out and we put back in this tank. And by bubbling oxygen through, we can have trillions and trillions of them. And here's an example of microorganism that would be in the tank. This is a nematode, but we have bacteria, rotifer, and then we have a lab that collects samples to make sure the microorganisms are healthy, because this is the heart and soul of the treatment plant. They're removing the dissolved organic material that's in the wastewater. So we want to make sure they're healthy and hungry, just enough hungry so they'll eat the stuff that's coming through. And then the microorganisms are settled out. This is called secondary, these are secondary clarifier, and it's very similar to the settling that occurs in the primary tank, but in this case, we're settling out the microorganisms, and we're going to recycle most of them, and we're going to waste some of them as we grow more than we need. And notice the 14 freeway in the background. And there's a pretty clean water. These secondary clarifiers, they look very similar to the primary tanks you saw. When they're emptied, you see these boards at the bottom, flight of chain, they're doing the same thing. These microorganisms, when we feed them, they multiply, and then they stick together, flock together, and they're slightly heavier than water, so they settle to the bottom, and then we slowly move them out. We slowly settle them out, recycle most of them, and then whatever the excess, if we grow too many, we'll send that to the digester. Here's what that looks like at the end of secondary. So after it's gone through the whole secondary process, look how clean that water is. And those V-shaped deals, these are the wears. And just like in primary, where you're just skimming the water off the top, you're doing the same thing here. And this water is pretty clean, but the last step, we're going to clean it even further. So I talked about how we recycle most of the microorganism, but we waste some of them. So when we waste it, because we have more microorganisms than we need, we take it to these circular structure, and what they're dissolved air flotation buildings. And what they're doing is removing some of the water from what we call the waste activated sludge, because we don't want to put all that water into our digester. It just doesn't make sense. It's not an efficient way to run it. So here's a close-up of this circular structure. What we're doing, we're bubbling air through this liquidy kind of oatmeal material. It floats the solid material up to the top. We skim that off, and that goes into our digester. And then here our digester here. We have 8 digesters here at the Lancaster plant. That's set up in an anaerobic environment, basically oxygen-free, and microorganisms that live in that environment, they take hold, and they use the stuff that's been settled out in primary and secondary. That's a food source for them. They eat that. it's in there, the material is in there for about 30 days. So the volume of material goes down. They kill pathogens while in there, microorganisms that would cause disease, and they generate methane and CO2. And we take that methane and we turn it around and we use it to heat the digester, because we want the digester to be at about 100 degrees, 98 points, so whatever our body temperature is, because this is set up just like our gut. And we use that methane to warm these digesters, because the Antelope Valley can get pretty cold, and we use it to warm the digester, so these microorganisms that would be in our gut are doing their thing, breaking the stuff down. And if we have extra methane, or biogas, will flare it. And you can see some shots of the microorganisms that would be in these digesters. So then the stuff that comes out of the digest after 30 days still has a high water content. And again, we don't want to have to truck off a whole bunch of water. So we de-water that sludge with what we call centrifuges that you see here. And here's how a centrifuge works. The stuff goes in, it's spun like a washing machine. And the water comes out in the back end. The biosolids with a smaller water concentration goes through the front end. And here's the building where the centrifuge is at. And let's play this drone footage. Building's about 2-3 stories tall. The drone makes everything look smaller, and the black stuff is the biosolids. We call it, it looks like chocolate cake to us, you know, it looks like crumbled chocolate cake. It has the consistency of Play-Doh. And here's the stuff coming out of centrifuge building. And this will go into sludge drying bed. It'll dry there. And then we take it off site, truck it off site, and then it's composted, and we try to use it as soil amendment. So the last step is tertiary treatment. And so we saw how clean the water was at the end of secondary treatment. This last step, we're just basically filtering it and disinfecting the water before it's discharged, either to pilot ponds, agricultural site. But before it gets there, we send it to tanks. So what you see here is water in these two what we call equalization tanks. Because the flows go up and down during the day or even during the season, we want to smooth out the flows so the operators know exactly how much chemical to put in there. We don't want to be chasing the peak. We don't want to add chemicals. We don't want to under add chemicals, you know, sodium hypochlorite. We want to get it just right. But by having the flow equalization or these equalization tanks, we know exactly how much flow is coming in, how much chemicals Alfonso and the crew has to add to make sure we're properly disinfecting and not over disinfecting, which again costs us and ratepayers money. Then the water, once it goes through flow equalization, then it goes into a filter. Here's a filter building that you see here. So this is the water coming from the top down. This is the water that left secondary treatment. Here's what the filter looks like. Basically, the water comes top down. It goes through coal, sand, and gravel. It goes through there pretty quickly. And then it goes on to disinfection. So now it goes to chlorine contact tank where we had sodium hypochlorite. It's in there for at least an hour and a half. And then we produce this water. It's like our little Niagara Falls. It's pretty amazing that it came in as raw sewage like 10, 12 hours ago. And this is what we produce after about 12 hours. Hey, Alfonso, is there anything you want to add about the tertiary treatment process or this waterfall?
Yeah, this cascade effect actually helps add dissolved oxygen back into the water, so we refreshen it before we send it out.
Oh, very cool, very cool. And then chlorine contact time, how long you think? An hour? It varies from plant to plant. But for
Yes,
this-
our minimum requirement is 90 minutes, so hour and a half. So we have to always be above an hour and a half per our discharge requirement.
Okay,
So
so
we
just
typically see about 150 minutes, which is what hour and
it's yeah, or like over 150
2 hours,
minutes.
yeah.
You said like
2
over 2
hours,
hours.
2.5,
Yeah.
2.5 hours. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. So
Oh.
just mixing with the sodium hypochlorite. Genesis, are there any questions that we should take at this point?
No, not at this point.
Okay, thank you, Genesis,
Okay.
Alfonso. So here you go. We went from really gross to essentially drinking water. It's pretty amazing job, and these guys make sure the plant's working 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So then what do we do with this water in this closed basin? Like I said earlier, every drop has to be managed. That's what makes Lancaster and Palmdale uniquely difficult plants to operate. Here's the Lancaster plant. Here are your storage reservoir. So historically, the plant started in the 50s. The Lancaster plant was small, but and so back then the water would go in a dry wash called Amargosa Creek, and it would flow over to where my cursor is at, and that's the boundary of Edwards Air Force Base. Back in 1959, the flows were really low, but then there was a population boom in the Antelope Valley. In the 60s, but Edwards is right there, and it's a job creator. And so population started going on. So the first thing we did was build this dike here. It's on Avenue C. The county, LA County border is right up here, but here's Avenue C. We built a dike to keep those flows off what is called Rosamond Dry Lake Bed on Edwards Air Force Base, the dry area. That created a wetlands called Paiute Ponds. And it was the sea dike was sufficient, but as flows got bigger, we had to figure out ways. As population increased, we started building storage reservoirs that you see here. And then in the late 60s, we started irrigating Apollo Park Lake that's here. And as the flows got bigger, we had to build more storage reservoirs. And then we also purchased land about 15 years ago, about 7 miles from the treatment plant that you see here, where we take the water, especially in the, and we send it over there and we use it to irrigate agricultural land, because the regulators, the people who give us our permit, they don't want any extra water on Edwards Air Force Base. So I'll step you through so the first one, Paiute Ponds, it is an amazing place. It's about 400 acres. It's been created by that Avenue C dike, and there's all types of birds there. It's on Edwards Air Force Base property, and if you want access, you reach through the bay. And during migratory bird season, there's just thousands of birds, and it's just an amazing oasis in the high desert. Yeah, it's just a little taste of Paiute Ponds. So that gets about a little bit less than 4 million gallons per day of the cleaned up water goes there to maintain that. About 250,000 gallons a day goes to Apollo Park Lake. Those lakes that are over there are filled with recycled water from the Lancaster plant. And then here are storage reservoirs. These things are huge. They store 1.3 billion gallons of water. And if you think about when you really need them, it's the winter month. It's times like this. Evaporation rates are low. It might have rained, so a farmer doesn't need water. A green belt doesn't need water. And we're not supposed to put it on Edwards Air Force Base. And so they're really full in the winter months. And then as the summer comes along, as the growing season picks up, we start pulling water out. And I guess part of the thing, the winter months, you also have a lower evaporation rate, but in the summer months, you have a higher evaporation rate, you have a higher demand for water. So they'll be filled up, start in the winter months, and then we'll start drawing down over the summer for agricultural reuse for the city and so on. And here's the big enchilada. About 7 million gallons a day goes to agricultural land that we operate and we lease the local farmer. We own and we lease this to local farmer. And they use that, they use center pivot irrigation to irrigate this land, and they grow fodder crop that helps local dairy. And then here's a close-up shot of the agricultural irrigation. Here's what the center pivot looks like. You see the thing, the hose is hanging down and irrigating with recycled water. Then a bit goes to the city of Lancaster. Throughout the Sanitation District 14 or Lancaster plant, recycled water goes to about 68 sites throughout the area. One of them being the Kaiser Permanente building. And that's it. And if you have any we'll take questions now. So if you want nitty-gritty questions, you can talk to Alfonso. You can either call him or email him, or if you want to do a tour, we do school tours, we do sewer science tours for kids in the area, because we're not going to be working at the sanitation districts forever. So we want to make sure there's new scientists, engineers, public affairs specialists like Genesis, treatment plant operators like Alfonso to replace us. So with that, looks like Genesis is raring to stump Alfonso with tough questions.
I am ready.
All
All right. So wait, before I get started, if you guys could please answer this poll. We're always looking for feedback and ways to get better. So I'm going to launch this poll, and then meanwhile, you guys answer that. I'll be going through some of the questions that we were asked. So poll is launched. All right.
I shouldn't take the poll, huh? Because I'm only going to give ourselves a 10 out of 10. No.
Yeah, please don't take the poll.
No.
Okay. So can you explain a little further on how you transport the water to the agricultural sites?
Alfonso, you want to take that? How we pump it there?
And how does the city, sorry, and let me just add this on real quick. And how does the city of Lancaster or Kaiser exactly use this reclaimed water?
Kaiser uses it for their toilets, I believe, and irrigation around their facility.
Yeah.
And then, we have large pumps. We call them agricultural pumps that pump. I forgot maybe about 5 miles away.
The ag site's about 5, 6, 7 miles. It varies because it's like a rectangular or square area that's a 9 square mile area. So 5 to 7 miles away.
And we have a very large tank that's about 2 million gallons out there that we fill up, and then the farmer will use from there to storage.
Okay.
And then is the water in the Paiute ponds, is that chlorinated?
We add sodium bisulfite, so we dechlorinate prior to the effluent leaving the plant.
So we disinfect, but once we know it's going to go into a water body, we like a river and any of our treatment plant, we dechlorinate. It's like changing the fish tank water. You might have a 10-gallon tank, you take out the fish and put in clean water. But if you're using tap water, you might have to add some chemical to dechlorinate before you put your goldfish back in. Same concept.
And that's all monitored. We have analyzers that are continuous reading, making sure that we don't get a positive reading of chlorine. And so if that does happen, we have safeguards in place that will dump valves will instantaneously start dumping large amounts of sodium bisulfite. So.
Okay.
And doesn't the water in the storage ponds evaporate?
Yes.
We do get evaporation rate. Yes.
And it's high. Like now, the evaporation rates are low, but in summer, when it gets really hot, as you can imagine, it goes up.
And we do try to empty the reservoirs by wintertime, so just in case winter flows, and it gets freezing temperatures. So out here, so the farmer doesn't farm as much because they'll freeze their crops. So typically from November to roughly around March, we'll be filling up our reservoirs.
So the last question regarding this before I go to our raised hand, Joyce. So is the water checked or examined during these processes to make sure that the process is working?
Yes, we collect samples from the beginning of the process, the very beginning of the plant, right by where those the primary tanks, and then all the way through the different steps of the process. So at the end of the primary tanks, we call it primary effluent, and then after the aeration units, we'll take samples there too, and then after the final the secondary tanks, we'll take samples there, and then after filters, and then at the outfall too as well. So that helps us monitor the plant and how efficient each process is working.
And you have a lab at that? Do you have a lab at?
Yes, we do. And then the lab, all their equipment is calibrated every morning, and it's logged, and they're audited, I think, once or twice a year by the state as well. So everything has to be accurate.
Okay, great. Now we're going to go to Joyce, who has her hand up. Joyce, can you please ask your question? Oh, unmute yourself.
When you were mentioning grit removal, you talked about eggshells being part of the components. Does that mean we shouldn't put eggshells down our garbage disposal?
I would say not, but yeah, it is a race of it. We do haul it off to the landfill. So all that stuff. So twice a month, we'll take those units out of service. So we have 4 grit chambers. We'll take 2 out one day, and then dewater it. And then our maintenance crew will go out there, and they're called Vector trucks. They're large trucks with pretty much like a vacuum, and they suck out all the grit, and they haul it off to the landfill.
Okay, great. And then we have another raised hand from Jay Morrow. If you could please unmute yourself.
You do that so well, Genesis. You should have your own radio show.
Jay Morrow, could you please ask your question?
Chocolate cake is used for soil amendment, and then do you sell it to companies that sell it retail?
So the biosolids, when it gets out of the digester centrifuge, we just, because it looks like crumbled chocolate cake. So we use it, we compost it. It's taken off site. We have about 5 or 6 different locations throughout the sanitation district. We take our biosolids, but most of it is composted. We either sell it or work with local farmers, or even if we have the land, we would utilize it on land that we might own in like Kings County. I'm not quite sure the specifics of the biosolids in Lancaster. I think
Ours goes to Synagro.
Okay, and
I guess refine it more, I guess. So it's Class B solids. Ours is considered Class B solids for non-human consumption.
Yeah.
So they use it for crops for like alfalfa for cows and stuff. So
yeah. Hopefully that answered the question.
Awesome. And we have one more raised hand from Rob Montree. Rob, can you please unmute yourself?
In the Detroit area, many times when we have heavy, unusual rainfalls, our sewage treatment plant, particularly in Detroit, becomes overwhelmed, and you hear reports of raw sewage going directly into some of our waterways, like Lake St. Clair and such. Any similar scenarios for you guys?
Let me take that first. So in Los Angeles, we don't have our storm drains combined with our sewer lines because we don't get as much rain. So I would imagine in Detroit, you have what they call a combined sewer system. Ours is separated out. But when it does rain, we do see increase in flows, usually, I don't know, 1.5 to 2 times. but our treatment plants are built for these peaking factors. So I think Detroit's a little bit different. Seattle's a little bit different. New York, any place that gets more rain, then when they built those systems, they combine the stormwater with the sewer. Ours is separate. Alfonso, you want to add to that?
Yes, that's correct. And we are, and we'll call it end of the line plant. So we have to take all water, there's no bypassing the plant. So we take all the water that comes in, and yeah, we haven't had no issues like that at all though.
Yeah.
All right, and Rob also had another question in the Q&A. In the primary stage, what happens to the debris, and is it sent to a landfill?
Go ahead, Alfonso.
Oh yeah, that's, so that would be like, we're talking about how the operators do the sludge judge, and it gets the consistency, the sludge that settles down the bottom is consistency of oatmeal. Well, that gets pumped to the digesters. So it's basically probably about 90% organic. So it's actually food for the bugs that are inside the digesters.
Okay,
And the
great.
bugs in the digesters break it down.
And then Rob's other question was, how often or with what frequency does the alarm go off and require someone to actually go out?
We maybe 3 times a day, but yeah, if you hear alarm, it's pretty much we call them workstations throughout the plant, and so it's pretty much the computer, as you've seen in the beginning of the video where they had the operator looking at the screens. So we have those configured throughout the plant, and so if alarm goes off, the operator will go to that remote location and check the alarms and see what's going on, what's happening with the process or pump failure or whatever the issue may be.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And I'm going to go back to the raised hands. I like these raised hands. I feel it makes all of this more real, hearing your voices.
You should be a
So,
DJ.
everybody with their hands up. Okay. Monica with her hand up. If you could please unmute yourself. Oh, it says you were not able to talk.
Oops.
I'm getting something that says you have a version of Zoom that doesn't allow you to ask your question. But what I can do is I think I have one of your questions here. So let's see. So Monica asked, how often does the water board inspect the plant? And what are the items that they inspect? Ooh, Alfonso.
I know. They'll come once a year. So they'll come once a year and they do a tour of the plant.
And then we have a monitoring section that produces reports for the monitoring board. And this plant is in what we call the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board, not the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board. I think there's like about 9 water quality control boards in the state of California. And this one is in the Lahontan region. And our monitoring group sends them reports, I want to say every 3 months. I don't remember, but it's pretty extensive with all kinds of constituents. Don't ask me to name them, but everything is in these thick reports that go to them. And then, like as Alfonso said, they come, I don't know, about once a year.
Then if we do have an exceedance, which we haven't, but if we do, it's that you have to notify the board the same day. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. And just a reminder, please fill out the poll if you haven't done so already. And then also, if you have a question, please use the Q&A feature. It ensures that your question doesn't get mixed, because everything in the chat, there can be a lot in the chat, so it's easier to miss, and Q&A is easier to pick them out. So if you have a question, please use the Q&A feature. All right, so the next question from Karen: do all 11 treatment plants function the same way?
The 2 in Antelope Valley are different because, as said earlier, they don't have a water body to discharge to. The 2 in Antelope Valley, they're twins. Well, they're not. They're sister plants, but they're slightly different. The filters, I think, in Lancaster are those
Or
what I
gravity
showed you, the
filters.
coal, anthracite's coal and sand and gravel, and the Palmdale plant, I think the filters are they're
Or
cloth.
yeah, cloth media filters. So there's just disc with cloth media.
And if you were at last week's virtual tour, you would have seen the, and then our largest and our first treatment plant down in the Los Angeles basin in Carson, that only gets primary and secondary treatment. It doesn't get tertiary treatment because at this point the water is too salty for reuse because it's such a high concentration of industry. But we're working on a project with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. We've just built a demonstration plant to see if we can, to show that we can cost effectively clean up that water. And we're going through facility planning, environmental document phase. And if it all goes well, we would add additional treatment to that plant and we would produce a purified water. It'd go beyond tertiary. It would be like a purified water that could be put back into the water supply in LA County. You know, water is a big deal no matter where you live on the planet, especially with these droughts. And even in the Caribbean, they're having droughts. And so we're trying to stay ahead of the curve. Most of our treatment plants, every drop is recycled. The one in Carson, it's the last untapped source, and we're trying to get to that. So.
And that is a segue to the next question from Carl. I have seen some newer communities that have recycled water at homes or at designated stations where residents can fill up for their own use. Is there any chance of that happening here?
Where you can fill up for recycled water?
Yeah, recycled water at homes or designated stations where you can fill up for your own use.
I'm not sure. I know the city of.
And then someone in the chat just said, yes, like they do in Orange County.
Oh yeah, that in terms of what we're trying to do in terms of the joint plant in Carson. But in the city of Lancaster, I think they have locations where you can fill up with recycled water for like a construction site for dust control.
Yeah, I think those plants that are like the one in OC, they actually they have an extra step after our tertiary. Well, they'll have RO. So
yeah, and that's what we're working on with Metropolitan Water District. We're looking at a purification step beyond that. So it'll be similar to what they do in Orange County. Or yeah, but we've been recycling since '62. Our most of our 11 treatment plants, 10 out of the 11, we recycle 1 trillion gallons of water, over 1 trillion gallons of water since '62.
yeah, I think they call it advanced water treatment.
Yeah, advanced water treatment, when you put that final purification step in.
Yeah, and by the way, I know this sounds very cliche, but these are very great questions, everyone. I'm like the chat is going up. Monica, I'm sorry, you can't, anytime I say to unmute you, it says that you're not able to. But I see you put some more questions on here. So Monica was referring, yeah, she brought up the toilet to tap from Orange County. And that's similar to what we're doing.
Our effluent does meet Title 22, which is, or it actually exceeds it. So, which is drinking water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Her other question was, why doesn't this water go into an aquifer?
Why doesn't it go into aquifer? I mean, part of the thing is that, first thing, the water is being used. It's being reused. Every drop is being reused, either agricultural area, and then also as more reuse sites come in, it gets pumped to like the city of Lancaster. And I don't think there's any, we're at a low point in the valley, and I don't think there's any natural aquifer in that area to recharge around the Lancaster plant. But every drop is spoken for, period. Agriculture, either, because Paiute ponds, we have to maintain a certain acreage of that because this important wildlife habitat. Agriculture, they want it. And as people ask for more water, we have to figure out how to shift the water balance from, let's say, maybe agriculture or Paiute ponds to some use in the city. So every drop is spoken for. In other places, in our other treatment plants, it does go to the aquifer. In the southern part of LA County, when I said since 62, we've been recharging aquifers near Pico Rivera. If you know Pico Rivera, right at the 605 and 60 freeway, we've been recharging the aquifer down there since 1962.
All right, so the next question's from Rob Montry. There's a lot of talk nowadays about prescriptions being dumped down toilets and drains. Are there any concerns about residue prescriptions that ultimately will be utilized for irrigation or fertilizer and its potential impact on humans and or animals?
That's something, our mission is protect public health and environments. It's something we're acutely aware of. We're studying that. We're looking at implications of that. And then on a parallel track, and Genesis, you can plug, we have free household hazardous waste roundups throughout the county. And part of what we want to collect are medication, unused medication. We don't want, the same way we don't want wipes going down the drain or fog, we want those unused medication brought to a roundup. Do you know when our next roundup will be in the valley, or there a roundup site?
Yeah, so there's actually a permanent location in Palmdale that's open every first and third Saturday of the month. So I think it's at the AVEX Center. I'm looking for the actual
And it's free.
address, and it's free. You can take your prescription drugs, you can take paint, you can take old batteries, you can take sharps, like your sharps and needles, pretty much anything, fluorescent light bulbs, car batteries. You can take all of that for free. And I'm gonna put the address down here. And I put the email, I put the website on there, www.lacsd.org/HHW, where you can visit for more information on the free items you can take.
And hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah.
And we're studying that issue. It's an evolving area of study. And as we learn more, we're gonna have to, we're gonna do more. So.
Yes. And okay, so next question. So from Patricia Baker asked, is there any chance of a virtual tour of a plant in the San Gabriel Valley?
Oh, you have it, Genesis. That's like that's a fastball down the middle of the plate, to use it.
Yeah. So we usually our most common and perfect. I just got a message with the dates. I don't even have to look it up. So we have our tour of the San Jose Creek, which is located on the corner of the 60 freeway and the 605. That's our most popular tour. Our most, yeah. So our tour for that will be on November 13th at 9 a.m. And if you visit our site, www.lacsd.org/tours, you can go check it out and get the Zoom ID number, which is 885-2005-9359-9359.
Genesis, do you know who will be doing that tour?
I don't know who will be doing that tour.
It's your call. If you know, because if you have somebody in mind, including you, that's all we need.
Yeah, we don't know who will hear it, who we can hear it. Yeah, okay. So someone someone that you've seen will be at that tour. But yes, it's at San Jose Creek. It's like Whittier, it's unincorporated Whittier / City of Industry. They're like all commingled there. But yes, on the corner of the 605 and the 60. So, okay, so the next question that we have on here that I think Patricia had was, why aren't those primary tanks covered?
Oh, we're in a remote area, so there's no homes around us to have an odor nuisance or complaints.
And yeah, and if we have homes near our treatment plants, we cover them. Like if you go to the November 13th San Jose Creek tour, you'll see it. See the primary tanks are covered. Yeah.
Perfect. So the next question, this is from Ramda. How do you decide which of the microorganisms get recycled?
We don't decide. So how we found what's optimum for our plant is it's called the MCRT, mean cell retention time. And so that's the time that the biology lives in our aeration unit. And so there's a mathematical equation that you do and to figure out how many days the biology is old. So ours is 20 days. And then you can reverse calc that so you know that number is 20 days to figure out how much to waste to keep that 20 days of biology.
So you don't want the microorganisms to be too old or too young. So you want them on average to be there 20 days. So you use the MCRT equation to figure that out.
Correct.
So if you find your MCRT is like 25 days, what do you do?
And then we reverse calc. So we'll get the 20 days, and then we'll reverse calc it to figure out our wasting rate. And then that'll tell us how many gallons per day we have to waste in order to keep that 21 days or 20 days.
So that usually means you have more microorganisms than you need. Is that what that means?
Yeah, so there's a ratio. It's called food to microorganisms, F to M. And so that's another calc that you figure out. So you figure out how much food that's coming into the aeration units and how many microorganisms that are under aeration. And so you do that mathematical equation and you figure out what the ratio is. Here's like 0.15 from food to microorganisms.
So I don't mean to say, how'd you get so smart? Where'd you learn all this stuff?
Oh, went to Cuyamaca City College. So I took wastewater classes to get associates in wastewater. And then, and worked my way up from OIT to plant supervisor.
Very cool.
I'm sorry, which city college?
Cuyamaca, that was down in San Diego. So I'm originally from San Diego.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And we're gonna ask, I think Carl has a few questions and then we'll go to Monica who has her hand up, and I see your question in the chat, so I'll ask that one right after. So, okay, so Carl's question, does the water freeze in the ponds when the temperature is really low?
No, so we're always pumping water into the reservoirs, and even in the wintertime, it might be freezing out. The water is coming in about 70 degrees because it's underground, so it's relatively still warm.
Okay, and where do you buy the cloth filters? Are they washed and reused?
Oh, that's Palmdale, but yeah, they have I think part of their process, if they have backwash pumps. So once they start getting clogged up, they'll go through a backwash cycle. And then I'm not really familiar with that process, but that's about as much as I know.
Yeah, and we do a backwash process at the Lancaster plant too.
Correct.
If those filters start getting clogged up, you just pump clean water from the bottom up. It knocks everything up in the water column. The filter media settles down, and then you take that dirty water and you send it back to the front of the treatment plant, I would imagine.
Correct, exactly.
Yeah.
We do that once every 24 hours.
Okay. How many filters do you have roughly?
We have 6 filters.
Okay.
Yeah.
At Lancaster. Okay.
And then we use the water from the clean water from the chlorine contact tanks. So right by where you see the outfall where the cascades are, we have large pumps, 3 large pumps out there that we use. It's called the backwash pumps. So those are the ones that backwash the clean filter through the filters.
Okay.
Okay, great. So Monica's question is, can you go over the steps again? There's coagulation, sedimentation, filtration,
You want me to
etc.
do that, or you want to do
Yeah,
that?
go for it. Good.
So when the water comes in, I mean, you do some kind of like pre-treatment, getting the large objects out the grit. Then the first thing you do is in your primary tank, you settle out the heavy stuff, you skim off the top. That's primary treatment. Then you go into the secondary treatment where microorganisms eat that material. They multiply, they procreate, then they flock or stick together. And then we settle those out, recycle most of them, waste some. And then the last step, that water that goes through secondary step goes through a filter, where that's the filter, and then it's disinfected, and that's where and then you have the clean water. And if you need to send it to Paiute ponds, you might dechlorinate, so you don't have too much chlorine in there, because it would create havoc in the environment. Hopefully that answered the question.
Hopefully. And Monica, please put in a follow-up question if you have one. All right, so next question from Jyoti. Does it matter if rainwater and environmental particles go into the equalization tanks?
If
No.
rainwater,
Okay. So Rob Montry has a follow-up question regarding his initial question about the debris being sent to a landfill. So in the first stage where large particles are removed and compacted, is a compacted debris sent over to a landfill?
What was that again?
the stuff that's compacted that we remove like from the bar screen, where does that go?
To the landfill, yes, it gets picked up twice. So we generate about 4 bins a week. So on Mondays and Thursdays, they'll pick it up and haul it off. That compactor too, it actually washes the rags. So we want to keep the organics in the system, which is the food for the bugs. So it goes through a rinse. So we have wash water that will go and they'll rinse the rags, and then it'll compact it, squeeze out all the organics, and then take or put it out through the chute into the trash bins.
Okay, and Monica has a follow-up question, which is, I don't understand much. It says, after that, does any water go to a water treatment plant, then to distribution?
No, so I think what she's referring to, like our project that we're working on down in Carson, we're going to try to put it into the aquifer, but down the road it might go to the front of a potable water treatment plant. Our water, it either goes directly to the ag site, directly to Paiute ponds, directly to Apollo Park, or directly to one of the reuse in the city of Lancaster. But it doesn't go to a potable water treatment plant after that. That could be down the road, but not now. I mean, every drop is spoken for.
Okay, and I'm gonna send a little ping, a little reminder to, so I'm gonna send a little reminder to answer the questions in the poll if you haven't already. So the next question is, so sorry, Monica has a follow-up. Is this the only plant that uses all of its water?
So basically, out of the 11 treatment plants, I think that 10 of them, pretty much all the water is spoken for. And that's why our largest and our first treatment plant, the one that has water that historically has been too salty for reuse, our reuse and compliance group, everyone, all hands are on deck working with Metropolitan Water District and see if we can capture that water. Right now it's going out to the ocean. And most people are aware of the cutbacks in water from the Colorado River, and we're trying to stay ahead of that curve. And we know we can play a big part in kind of keeping our quality of life. So the other 10, it's pretty much spoken for. I think Alfonso, I think every drop you got, it either goes to the reservoir.
Correct.
And it's just a parking place. Then it goes to the agriculture when they need it, Paiute when they need it, Apollo Park when they need it, the city of Lancaster as their demand continues to grow. So the one down and help us with the one in Carson. Don't call it toilet to tap. Call it fields of
Flowers
green
to
or something.
showers.
Yeah, flowers to what is it? Showers to flowers. Call it that. That's the one thing.
Oh, yeah.
Call it. Yeah.
Yeah, showers to flowers.
Showers to flowers. That's what it is.
So, okay, so this is our last question that we have for now. And this one's for Alfonso. Drum roll, please. Okay. How many people work at the Lancaster plant?
In operations right now, we have 6 operators, and including myself. So that's 7. When we're fully staffed, it will be up to 11 operators. So like Basil was saying, we had retirement, so people retired and opened up positions. So we'll be hiring. And then we have support crews, maintenance, electricians, and mechanics that are on site as well. And probably about 4 for each, 2 electricians, 4 maintenance, and 2 mechanics. They're shared between the mechanics, and maintenance is shared between Lancaster and Palmdale. And then our labs, I think lab were about 4 lab personnel as well. So quite a few people.
Okay, awesome. We have, I think that was it. That was our last question. I put he mentioned job, so I put the link for our careers page on our website. So feel free to check it out or be up to date with it if you want to see what job positions we currently have available. So we have lacsd.org, and then don't forget about the HHW event, which I'll put the link there. That's where you can take all your free household hazardous and electronic waste there. And then we also have the link for tours. So you can go check that out and look at the schedule for the rest of the year. And then we also have, if you want to look back at a recording of this or a recording of any other tour that we've done in the past, you can check out our YouTube channel, and I'm putting our YouTube URL on there as well. So that's youtube.com/Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts. And there's a typo in there, excuse me, but it's Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts. So with that, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I hope you guys learned a lot, because I learned a lot. I always do. So with that, we'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much for joining us. And San Jose Creek, November 13th, hosted by someone that you've seen here. Basil, I'm looking at you.
Hopefully it's
I'm just
not
kidding.
me, but
I'm just kidding. It's for sure it's not Alfonso. Unless Alfonso, you're interested. I'm kidding. No, but you'll see us at the November 13th. So
at
with
what
that,
time? What
at
time?
what time? 9 a.m.
Same batch.
9 a.m. because Basil has trouble waking up early. I'm kidding. That's me. That's me. Okay.
If the Dodgers
So-
win the World Series, I guarantee I will have a trouble waking up.
Yeah. So that's it. Yeah. So we'll see you November 13th at 9 a.m. And oh, Karen, you're so sweet. She says that she wants this trio. So November 13th at 9 a.m. And if you have any other questions, the last thing I'm going to put on here before I let you go is you can email us at info@lacsd.org. That'll reach our office, and one of us will respond to you quickly. And someone said, Basil, you do such a good job. Do it again. Don't boost his ego like that. Okay. Thank you so much, Jay Morrow. And thank you so much, everyone, again, for coming. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope to see you on the next one.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
Bye.